Right. Okay. So today we're going to discuss the physical environment of animal tissue culture. All right. So now, as you all know, that we need to create an environment, artificial environment, because you actually excise the tissue from the certain part of the animal, and you are trying to create an environment so that the cells or the tissue that you excise from the animal can survive and also can further replicate. Okay, so the environment that you need to create must include nutritional environment and hormonal environments of the cell in vivo, which include and you control the following physical parameters. The first one is the temperature. Okay, temperatures is very, very important for the cell to grow because different cells, different animal cells, and they need a different temperature for them to survive and replicate. Uh, uh, is this also the same applied to the pH? Because some animal cells they prefer low pH and some they prefer higher pH. This also the same to the osmolarity. Yeah, some animal cells they prefer higher osmolarity and some they prefer lower osmolarity. The gaseous environments, some animal they probably need a higher CO2. Some might not need that, and also providing a supporting surface for the cell continue to grow, especially for the encouraged dependent cells. Okay, and also protecting the cell from the chemical, physical, and mechanical stress. As you know, that's because you already excise the cell from the animals, the originally in vivo of the animal, and when you excise it and then you culture it, you are actually giving the stress to the cell. Okay, so the chemical, the physical, and also the medical stress need to be monitored constantly so that the cell will continue to survive and replicate. Now, let's look at the temperature. Okay, so most mammalian cells, the culture are grown in incubator that are set at 37 degrees Celsius. However, some of the mammalian cells, such as testes and skin cell, they are maintained slightly lower than 37, like 35 to 34. Okay, other cells such as insect cell, the worm, and also the fish cells, of course, they need much lower, okay, much lower temperature compared to the mammalian cell. Okay, you cannot grow them at 37 degrees Celsius. Also, the growing cell at too high temperature is more detrimental to the low temperature, because when you grow the cells at too high temperature, for example, at 50 degrees Celsius, most of the enzyme and other proteins or growth factor will be denatured. So when they denature, all the physiological processes in the cell will not be able to perform. Okay, and also short exposure to the temperature as little as 3 degrees Celsius above normal may lead to the death of the entire culture. This is what you call the heat shock. Okay, when you create a heat shock environment to the cell, and most of the protein will be denatured. All right, and could lead to the death of the entire culture. And the abrupt changes of the temperature will cause many changes in the cell that may take some time to disappear. So do not leave the plate out for too long, allowing them to cool down to room temperature, as this will affect the growth rate of other properties of the cell. So for example, most, when you culture your cell, you culture them in the incubator. When you wanted to do passaging or subculturing, then you bring it out and then put it in the laminar flow hood. But when you put in the laminar flow, you should not leave it for too long, because the media temperature will go down slowly, and then this will affect the process of the cell survival. Okay, and also the primary mode of the maintaining temperature in the cell culture, of course, in the incubator. Okay, we need an incubator because the incubator will provide constant temperature, consistent temperature all the time for the cell to survive. All right, and while most cells culture incubators are set up to regulate the humidity and also the gaseous environment, as well as the control temperature. Okay, most probably the most important part, of course. And since there are alternative methods for controlling pH and humidity, right? So it is very important that you purchase, if you become a lab manager one day, that you better purchase a good incubator that will equip with proper temperature monitoring system. And if you can have extra funding, then you probably will consider those incubators that can provide the pH buffering system as well as the humidity monitoring system. Okay, so far, can you follow me?
Yes, doctor.
Yes,
Yes,
doctor.
doctor.
Okay, good. So the incubator that's maintain temperature by warming or circulating heat that are more responsive to the temperature changes that will restore the temperature faster after the door of the incubator is open and closed. So when you open the incubator, okay, the door of the incubator, make sure that you don't leave it for too long. You only take the culture that you need and then make sure that you close it immediately after you take the culture out for other manipulations, okay, and never ever leave it for too long, because the temperature may go down quite easily, because most of the incubator will be put under the air conditioner room. Okay, so the outside temperature is much lower than the inside temperature of the incubator. Okay, and also maintaining the temperature for experiments where the cells cannot be placed in the incubator, such as timeless photography, requires special arrangement. Why people keep coming in? Why they cannot be on time? So it's very annoying, right? So next time, if who are late, I will not let them in. Right. So do you understand what is timeless photography? Any idea?
Capturing of the different frames, then you can see the growth.
Yeah, that's one of it. Yeah, very good. So for example, if you want to see the cell migration, how cell they actually migrate, so or how the cell grow, then you probably need to take a 24 hours recording. So when you want to take the 24-hour recording, then you need a proper arrangement, right? You need to put the plate under the microscope so that you can capture or record the movement of the cell. And at the same time, you need to provide a conducive environment for the cell to grow. And if you leave it outside, then you have to consider that the media may dry out. For example, if you put it under 37 degrees Celsius, right? So the media could dry out much faster, because you need to leave the lid open. Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
So you need to provide good humidity so that the media will not dry out. If the media dry out, then the cell will die. So you need to make a very special arrangement when you wanted to carry out the time-lapse photography for your cell. Okay. Then important to be sure that the heating does not lead to the undue evaporations of the media, let's say just now. So it is done by maintaining a saturating humidity in the air in the incubator. So airborne over the culture to keep them warm should also have saturated humidity, and the culture kept on the heated surface will work best if the cell is in the seal flux to minimize the evaporation. Okay. Still remember how the humidity can slow down the evaporation processes?
Yes.
Yeah, if there are too many water vapor on top of the media, so the evaporation rate will be much slower. Is that right? Compared to the totally dry air. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So since incubator hoods and also microscopes and freezer and other equipments in the tissue culture lab will generate a good deal of heat, so there should be a good turnover and a good cooling system for the culture room. So if you have your incubator is 37 degrees Celsius, but the room temperature is 40 degrees Celsius, do you think that is a good idea? Do you think what will happen? What will happen actually to your culture later? Yeah, your incubator said that you set it up at 37 degrees Celsius, right? But the room that house your incubator is 40 degrees Celsius. So what will happen to your culture?
it will be spoiled.
Right.
Yeah, the incubator of course will spoil, and at the same time, the incubator will adapt the outside temperature and slowly become 40 degrees Celsius, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end, your cell will die. So you got to be careful to check the room temperature as well. So if the temperature in the room exceeds 37 degrees by very much of any length of time, so it is possible that all the culture will be lost, since most tissue culture incubator do not cool. So you don't have the cooling system for the incubator. So if a non-mammalian cell lines, such as those from insect, fish, and amphibia, are being cultured in the laboratory, so an incubator that will cool down the culture is desirable, since this type of cell must be grown at temperature which is well below 37 degrees Celsius. So if you need to culture the insect cells, or maybe amphibian cell or fish cell, so you need to create an environment which suits the cell to grow. For example, 34 degrees Celsius or maybe 32 degrees Celsius. So you need to create that environment. So you need to put the cell in the room at maybe at the temperature that they desire, or the cell desired to grow. Okay. Another one is the pH. Okay, so pH is essential for survival of individual mammalian cells and also as the organism, which is for maintaining the appropriate ions balance. Okay, so for maintaining the optimal functions of the cellular enzyme, or for optimal binding of the hormones and also the growth factor to the cell surface receptor. You still remember what I have told you this morning? For some of you who attended my lecture this morning for developmental biology, we have the transmembrane proteins, right? There are so many proteins that sit on the membrane bilayer. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah? So what happens if the pH change? What happens if the pH change?
The protein will denature.
The protein will not be denatured. Denature because of the temperature, but the protein cannot bind to the receptor. The shape of the receptor may change. Okay, and the growth factors, remember, we also have growth factors to assist the cell growth. So these growth factors, which is found in your membrane bilayer, could not bind to the receptors as well. So it will very much affect the physiological processes of the cell. Okay, boleh faham?
Okay, doktor.
Boleh doktor.
Boleh ya? Kamu faham? Kamu pernah betul-betul belajar cell membrane bilayer tu tak? Pernah tak? Tak, kamu tahu apa itu membrane bilayer? Membrane cell, tahu tak?
Ya, ya.
Ya,
Yes.
membrane cell itu dia banyak protein kan? Sama ada dia embedded dalam membrane cell ataupun pada permukaan membrane cell, betul tak?
Yes. Betul.
And there are so many calcium pump, natrium pump juga. Pernah dengar ini tak?
Ya, pernah.
So kalau dia pH dah berubah, maka ions contohnya cation ions and ions itu pun akan menyebabkan calcium pump dan calcium pump itu tidak boleh berfungsi dengan baik. Yeah. So basic, these are all basics. So you really need to understand how the membrane cell work well. Okay, apa yang menyebabkan membrane cell itu tidak berfungsi dengan baik. Also, the transient changes in the pH can alter the cell metabolism and induce the production of the heat shock proteins, process which can lead to the apoptotic of the cell. So pH juga akan menyebabkan perubahan pada metabolism of the cell. Okay, di mana dia akan kalau dia berlaku, dia akan menjana ataupun menghasilkan heat shock protein, di mana heat shock protein ini boleh promote the apoptotic, ya, di mana sel bunuh diri. right? So different compartment of the cell can have widely differing pH, but the cell will maintain the appropriate pH of its subcellular compartment if the external environment is correct. So kita kena tahu setiap sel tu, dalam sel tu dia ada compartment tertentu, betul tak?
Betul.
Okay, dan setiap compartment ini dia punya micro pH adalah berbeza. Dia punya micro environment adalah berbeza. So dalam itu kita tak dapat kacau. Tetapi di luar tu, contohnya di the medium tu, pH of the medium kita boleh control, betul tak?
Betul.
Tapi pH dalam compartment tu boleh tak kita control? Tak dapat kan? Karena sel sendiri yang boleh control. Kita tak dapat. Kita hanya boleh dapat control the external environment. So as long as we provide the correct pH for the cell to grow, then the cell will adapt supaya dia punya internal microenvironment tu dia boleh adjust. Boleh faham ni?
Boleh.
Okay. Then the correct external pH provide proper membrane components, ion, and also ratio of the ions, which allow the cell to maintain its internal pH through the integrity of the ions pump and also the cell membranes. So most media strive to achieve and maintain the pH between 7.0 to 7.
Recording stopped.
Student sekejap, saya punya komputer dia out of battery, sekejap. Halo, student boleh dengar tak?
Boleh.
Boleh.
Sekejap, saya tengah sekejap, saya akan balik semula. Sekejap, Halo, student boleh dengar?
Dengar?
Boleh dengar. Sekejap,